as coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. We got Mr. Josh Waters coming up in an hour. We're going to go over week number 3 of the Conduit for Action scorecard. Then we'll be talking with State Representative John Eubanks. Show starts in 5.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for being with us. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine here. We will be bringing you the latest developments from the Marble Palace, the 92nd General Assembly, here in just a little bit. I guess at 7:05. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about it coming up here at 7:30. But just real quick, the big news is that the governor's standalone tax plan did run yesterday in committee and did pass out of committee. So that certainly is, I think good news. We'll talk more about that bill coming up at 7:05. Again, this was a standalone tax cut bill when we're just talking about the income tax cut. And so that certainly is interesting. And good news for the taxpayers, especially the fact that it's a standalone bill. Telephone number 870-275-9799 if you want to contribute to the conversation. Everybody is anticipating the President of the United States today. This is the State of the Union night, and we'll have coverage of that for you this time tomorrow. But let me tell you something. You know, I'm already seeing just all of this fake news, all of these, all these politicians trying to get out in front of what the president's going to say about the crisis, about the emergency at the border. And I want you to understand something. I'm going to say this again. It is an emergency at the border. Now, I don't know if he's going to declare an emergency, but this is not this has been the status quo just because the media has not told you what's been going on at our southern border for decades. Doesn't make the situation any less serious. Just because they've been hiding the problems and not telling you what the truth is about the children and women who've been sex trafficked across our southern border, about how a war on drugs really makes no sense if you don't have a secure border in some capacity. There has never really been a war on drugs, if you really think about it. Just because the media hasn't been doing, their jobs telling you the truth, just because you've had both parties, one that wants future voters and the other that wants cheap labor over the decades, that doesn't mean it's any less of an emergency or any less serious. Now, I happen to think it's kind of swelling to a fever pitch, number one, with the caravans, but I think that's in part because people, I think President Trump taking this one issue and hammering it home and standing up for this idea of countries with borders and the citizens and their government get to decide and get to monitor, regulate who comes in and who gets out of their country. I actually think that's that's one of the reasons this thing has kind of gotten to a fever pitch here, because it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Again, the telephone number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. So, the interesting thing here is that we have I am more aware now. I was at the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party last night, and I just was not there as a speaker there. I was just there as a really an observer. I did speak a little bit about some of the bills and stuff that I'm watching, and but it really became apparent to me, if you really think about it, our media, when the president says, the media always tries to say that the president's a liar. Do you remember when the president said that he was wiretapped, that Trump Tower was wiretapped? Now, technically, it wasn't a wiretap, was it? It wasn't a wiretap. But guess what? Most Americans know what a wiretap is. They know the idea is that you were spied on. Fast forward, knowing what we know now about the unmasking, about the FISA warrants based on a phony dossier that the Democrat Party paid for, we know that he was spied on, or members of his campaign were spied on. In Trump Tower, we know all of this now, right? So often the president says things that the media says are untrue. They make fun of him, they laugh at him, then you come to find out it was actually completely correct, at least the gist of what was said. And the media, they have an embargo on the truth in this country. They truly do. They have an embargo on the truth. And it's really sad, because there's a lot of the people around us have no idea that the mainstream media is lying to them, as actively trying to deceive them. And I want that's the phrase I would like you to take away from this segment. Actively trying to deceive you. You see, most people don't even want to believe that. Most people hear that and they think it's crazy, because why in the world would they actively try to? For example, I was watching or listening to the radio on the program. I'm sorry, listening to the radio on the way into the program today, and I was hearing this new story, this brand new story about how there's a study out of California that says there were X many bots. There are all these robots on Twitter, and they were responsible for tweeting out fake news, and some of the bots trace back to Russia, and some of the bots trace back to Iran, and some of the bots trace back, and I'm just thinking, what am I listening to right now? The mainstream media, they're robots. Now, I'm not saying that, obviously, Russia, Iran, these countries, yeah, they've got these, trolls or robots or whatever that are, doing stuff on the internet. That's just what happens. That's just a product of the internet. But you got to keep in mind, when you're listening to this guy report, the internet is the greatest threat to the mainstream media's embargo on the truth in this country that they've ever seen. So we would rather listen to this guy who's reading off a script that's been written not by him. And that's all of the mainstream media. They read scripts that, how else do they use the exact same terminology and the exact same phrases? So, I don't know. To me, as I'm sitting here and I'm reading the headlines about the president's State of the Union address, I don't believe them. Trump to call for bipartisanship. That may very well be the case. Call for unity. And it's no coincidence that we have the Southern District of New York is now looking into the inauguration of the president, and we've got that in the Wall Street Journal today, because they're doing everything they can. Nancy Pelosi didn't even want him to give this speech. They don't want to have to look at the angel moms who've lost their kids because we refuse to do something about illegal immigration in this country. Call to Trump for bipartisanship as he threatens to declare an emergency. Tuesday's State of the Union speech comes at a time of deep partisan divide over border wall after record funding. Here's the thing. None of these people have a clue what the president's going to say tonight. And none of us have, I'm sorry, there's going to be fact checks galore, right? Fact check. Remember when the media was the fact checker? Remember when you didn't actually need PolitiFact or Snopes? Remember that? It's just, everybody is peddling a point of view these days, and the ones who are peddling a point of view without confessing that that's what they're doing are actively trying to deceive you. The ones who claim to be objective but in fact are not are actively trying to deceive you. The ones who are at least honest about where their point of view comes from, like myself, I am a conservative. I want limited government. I'm sorry. It's much more honest. Much more honest. You can evaluate where I'm coming from. Speaking of that, there's been really, in many cases, a media blackout over what's happened in Virginia with the abortion comments. Yesterday, we were speculating that no one's talking about what the governor, Ralph Northam, said about infanticide, about a baby that's born and then you can murder it. No, once you're born, even Democrats for a long time, yep, you're a citizen now. We're going to protect your constitutional rights. The Democrat Party right now is we're watching it implode, and we're watching them destroy themselves based on their own weird, sanitization efforts of history, or attempts to sanitize history. Here's a report, though, that Ralph Northam's abortion comments prompted classmate to reveal the racist photo of him. At first, we thought in blackface. Then people thought, well, maybe he's the one in the KKK hood. Can you imagine if this was a Republican? This was so devastating to the Democrats' narrative. That's why CNN had to lie and actively deceive you by saying this guy was a Republican when it was first reported. See, even when they have to report something they don't want to report, they lie to you and they say that the man's a Republican instead. A former classmate of Governor Ralph Northam is believed to have tipped off the press about his racist yearbook photo in response to the embattled Virginia Democrats' extreme remarks, according to Joshua Kaplan, about proposed legislation that would allow fourth trimester abortions, according to the report. The controversy surrounding the bill began when a push from Virginia Democrats to lift restrictions on late-term abortions. In a video that went viral last week, Virginia Delegate Kathy Tran acknowledged that her proposed bill would allow abortions up to, until moments before birth. You know what the president's going to do tonight? This is what the story should be. He's going to call for bipartisanship. He's going to do this. No, he's going to bring up the abortion argument and the fact that the Democrat Party is trying to kill babies after they're out of the womb. They're theorizing. About what and the bunch of guys from Australia did this years ago, where they said, you should probably be able to kill a child up to its, second birthday, because it doesn't really know what's going on yet. I mean, listen, on the abortion issue, I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump uses the word evil in describing the other side's position. People talk, calls for bipartisanship, no, let me tell you something. This is the time for President Trump to just drop the hammer. And what I mean by that is you've got a crisis at the border. You've got Nancy Pelosi that said she would just reopen the government and we'll negotiate. She's not going to give one dime for a barrier they used to vote for in the past. The president should bring up quotes and should read from Barack Obama verbatim about what he used to say about the wall. He should read quotes exactly from what Chuck Schumer used to say about the wall, what Nancy Pelosi used to say about the wall, and just make them sit there and listen to it. That's what should happen. And then when we bring up the idea of Roe versus Wade, and who knows if they claim that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was at some concert last night, by the way. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was apparently at some concert making her first public appearance since cancer surgery. That's the headline. And I can't find one photo of her actually being at the event. Apparently it was an event honoring her, and she's at a concert, and she's sitting in the back, and a lot of people didn't even know she'd entered the room, but at some point you'd think that she left. At some point you'd think that the concert goers left. At some point you'd think they turn around. Not one person pulled out their phone and snapped a photo that I couldn't find. Apparently that didn't happen. We've got media stories about her first public appearance, but there's no photos yet. So call me skeptical. I did just talk about how the media is actively trying to deceive us. So anyway, will she be there? I mean, how convenient. No, she's not there. But she did make a public appearance the day before the State of the Union. But she decided not to, use her strength to actually appear at the State of the Union. Will she be at the State of the Union is the question. But anyway, back to this Northam thing. During a Wednesday interview with WTOP-FM, the Virginia governor called the blowback over the bill that would allow abortions even while the mother is dilating really blown out of proportion. When we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physician, more than one physician, by the way, and it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. Asked in a press conference on Thursday if his remarks hurt the bill's chances of becoming law, Northam replied, "I don't have any regrets." And remember, he said that the baby would be made comfortable and everything else. So apparently, when he said these comments, this is when a classmate decided to tip off the news about a racist photo. The following day, Northam claimed the racist photo was merely one big misunderstanding. Yesterday, I took responsibility for content that appeared on my page in the Eastern Virginia Medical School yearbook that was clearly racist and offensive. I am not and will not excuse the content of the photo. It was offensive, racist, and despicable. And, of course, then he said that that wasn't him. And then he said, but I did dress up like Michael Jackson one time. And that leads me to something that we didn't talk about at all, according to this Ralph Northam story. We didn't talk about this at all yesterday. In his yearbook, his nickname is Coon Man. Do you know about this? Coon Man. Ralph Northam, quote, "I don't know why friends called me Coon Man." Really? You don't know? You don't know why you had a nickname? Coon Man. It's right there. Matter of fact, go over to our friend who's a friend of the program, Larry Schweikert, the author of that great, big, thick blue book called A Patriot's History of the United States. Here's a photo of him in his yearbook. Ralph Shearer? Is that Shearer? Ralph Shearer Northam, a.k.a. Goose, Coon Man. Goose Coon Man. He doesn't know why they called him Coon Man. A guy who, admittedly, whether it's in that photo or another one, dresses up in blackface. But he doesn't know why they called him Coon Man. If this were, I hate to even say, I'm sick and tired of the double standard. But if this were a Republican, there'd be a rip in the space-time continuum. It's crazy. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. Here's a headline from last week. You know, last week, the entire country was colder than normal. I think most of you know this. But we heard these stories. I mean, down here in Arkansas, folks, not so much. I mean, we had cold temperatures, but it wasn't anything that we aren't used to, right? But then, of course, up north, you have people, experiencing the negative, negative 10, 20, 30, I think even 50 degrees. I mean, and you had all these, stories about millennials who have never experienced this kind of cold before. This headline over at Breitbart: Donald Trump keeps mocking global warming leftists with record cold temperatures. Because, I'm telling you, there's so many things that Donald Trump does to troll the other side that talk radio's been doing for years. Like, every time it's cold, is a talk radio.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
All right, so we'll see what the President's State of the Union is, going to be. We'll obviously, I can't wait to listen to it. I've been excited for the President to give this speech for a long time now. Given the state of the country, part of me wishes, honestly, I don't think a president would ever say this, but the state of our, when they say the state of our union, I'd love for a president to just be like, it's not good. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why the state of our union is not good. It's because of you Democrats out there, or whatever he's going to say. You know what I mean? Like, because obviously the state of our union is not good, right? We have a divided country. We have a media that is really, really upset that you have a president who is trying to reverse progressivism and shrink the size of government, cutting regulations and things like that. Because the media, by and large, they're taught in these journalism schools that Marxism works and looks really good on a chalkboard. And it may go even beyond that, but, it's incredible to me. I mean, the media used to, the mainstream media, the liberal media, they used to be anti-war and anti-conflict, but now all of a sudden, they want to stay in Syria and stay in Afghanistan. The media, back during the Cold War, thought the Soviet Union was pretty great. And now all of a sudden, they think Russia is terrible and is horrible and is an enemy and that Donald Trump is a KGB agent. There's just some things that don't make any sense going on right now in this country with how the news is reported. And it's getting worse and worse. And I think there's so many little small victories, this is just my own speculation, going on behind the scenes that the mainstream media and the deep state are like an animal. Essentially, it's been, their leg's been caught in a bear trap. And I think they're just going crazy. I mean, they're going nuts. Case in point, the BuzzFeed story that was completely fake news. And now we're seeing a lot of these journalists being laid off, which is something to make note of. Case in point about Ginsburg. Ginsburg allegedly makes her first appearance since cancer surgery. This is the Associated Press story on it, using a photo that is a stock photo from some other time. And it's really weird. The 85-year-old Ginsburg is attending a concert at a museum a few blocks from the White House that's being given by her daughter-in-law and other musicians. Patrice Michaels is married to Ginsburg's son, James. Michaels is a soprano and composer. The concert is dedicated to Ginsburg's life in the law. Ginsburg had surgery in New York on December 21st. She missed arguments at the court in January, her first illness-related absence in more than 25 years. She has been recuperating at her home, according to the Associated Press, in Washington. Ginsburg had 2 previous bouts with cancer. The justice, listen to this, the justice sat in the back of the darkened auditorium at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. The National Constitution Center, which sponsored the concert, did not permit photography. So that's why we have no photos. Okay, no photos. James Ginsburg said before the concert that his mother is walking a mile a day and meeting with her personal trainer twice a week. The performance concluded with the song set to Ginsburg's Answers to Questions. And introducing the last song, Michael said, "Bring our show to a close, but not the epic and notorious story of RBG." Interesting. I'm always like, oh, yeah, global warming. Hey, did you hear it's so cold outside? I saw a Democrat with his hands in his own pockets. Anyway, so here to talk a little bit more about this, I want to introduce you to a guy who is author of a book by the name of Inconvenient Facts. You should look it up on Amazon. Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. He's a geologist with more than 35 years of experience researching and studying various aspects of Earth's processes. His name is Gregory Wrightstone. Gregory, welcome to the program this morning.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Now, that was funny about the Democrats with their hands in their own pockets. I hadn't heard that one.
I don't know. I heard it a long time ago. I don't know. I certainly didn't make it up. Gregory, what are the chances that I'm interviewing a geologist by the last name of Wrightstone? You've got to have heard that one before, right?
Oh, you'd be surprised how many people pass up on that. Yeah, it's incredible. There's another guy. I talk a lot in hurricane season about hurricanes, and the top hurricane guy at NOAA is a guy whose last name is Landsea, Christopher Landsea. What a great name for a hurricane guy.
That's fantastic.
Almost as good as a guy by the name of Wrightstone as a geologist.
That's exactly right. Well, so tell us about this. Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. What made you want to write that book?
Yeah, I didn't set out to write a book. I really didn't. I set out to seek the truth. This was a quest for the truth. As a geologist, I knew some of what we were being told about climate change was just wrong. It just was. I knew it through my scientific background with geology. I suspected other things were, but you know, and your listeners know, we hear so much contradictory information. So I said, I'm going to set out, and I set out, again, to seek the truth, and I went back to the base data from NASA, from NOAA, from peer-reviewed studies, and frankly, what I found out was shocking. Most of what we're being told about climate change, the actual science, facts, and data tells it's 180 degrees opposite. Now, it's not. I'm not saying climate change isn't happening. It is. I'm not saying that carbon dioxide and human-caused carbon dioxide isn't increasing. It is. And I admit that increase in CO2 has a warming effect on the atmosphere. It has to. It does. But I'll just argue it's fairly modest and greatly overwhelmed by the same natural forces driving temperatures since the dawn of time. And the other aspect to this, the second half, is these climate alarmists will tell you of all these horrific, what I call climate apocalypse events they're going to happen 50 or 80 years in the future. I look at what's actually happening today, and as we get into this discussion, you'll learn more about this, but I see an Earth that's prospering, thriving, and greening. I see an Earth.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back to the show this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. Broadcasting live up at facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as our YouTube channel. And conduitnews.com. Stay tuned. We got Mr. Josh Waters coming up at 7:05. Going to go over week number 3 of the scorecard. A few bills that are on the radar, and then of course there's going to be bills that are good, bills that are considered bad, and then we got State Representative John Eubanks. He's going to come on and talk about his deregulation. Scope of practice, expanding the scope of practice for optometrists here in the state of Arkansas. Let's see here. A couple things coming up with the Marble Palace today. Now, am I right in assuming that Aaron Pilkington's Stand Your Ground law is going to run sometime today? Is that what I was told that last night? So somebody let me know if that's what's supposed to happen today. That'll be very exciting if that's the case. Okay, let's talk about some other legislation, shall we? Number one, we've mentioned this before. Matter of fact, last week we had Dr. Michael Packo on the program. Now, he is the head of the Libertarian Party of Arkansas. What you need to know is this. The Libertarian Party almost got ballot access, meaning a third party would have been automatically on the ballot next year without having to go get signatures. Libertarian candidate for governor, Mark West, he got 2.9% of the vote. If he would have gotten 3% of the vote in the gubernatorial race, the Libertarians would be granted ballot access. And so that's very close to having a third option. And see, the way I see it is, I tend to vote Republican, okay? I agree with the Republican Party platform, the principles of the Republican Party. But, you know, a lot of times there are Republicans that don't agree with the platform. Let's just be honest about it. When they actually go down and vote and you look at how they voted, you realize, they don't agree with that Republican Party platform as much as I do, yet they used it to get elected. And so sometimes that kind of Republican will get primaried by a more conservative Republican. Sometimes a conservative Republican will get primaried by a bigger government Republican that has the support of the establishment. Regardless, primaries are pretty much the new general election in Arkansas because everybody's a Republican, and we've said that before. It can be very annoying to incumbent Republicans to have a primary. That's no secret. But at this point, once you get past that primary, you're pretty much done. For the most part, with few exceptions. Okay? Well, let's say, let's just say that, I don't know, the dissatisfaction with some lukewarm Republicans inspires a Libertarian to get on the ballot, and now you've got two headaches, not one. You've got to get past your primary, and then you got to turn around and run against Libertarian. And here's the thing about Libertarians. They run on the idea of freedom and liberty, and freedom and liberty is actually a pretty popular idea in Arkansas. So there's a lot of people, Libertarians included, that interpret a bill by Senator Trent Gardner, SB 163, to Johnny Sweep the Legs, the Libertarian Party of Arkansas, and to limit the choices of the voters of the people of Arkansas. If you don't know what Johnny Sweep the Legs is, then you have never seen Karate Kid, and I have pity for you. The Arkansas Libertarian Party has put out a very detailed statement on this bill. Save our democracy, they write. Vote no on SB 163. And I'm going to read their statement. The Libertarian Party of Arkansas is resolutely opposed to SB 163, a bill currently being considered in the Arkansas legislature. It would raise the petition signature requirement for new political parties from 10,000 registered voters to 3% of voters in the most recent gubernatorial race. Presently, this would represent approximately 26,750 signatures, an increase of nearly 270%, meaning you're creating a lot more work on a party to get on the ballot and have a voice. Oh, I'm told that Aaron Pilkington's bill 1059 will not run today. Just making that, just got a text message on that. SB 163 would obviously make it more difficult for so-called third parties like the Libertarian Party to qualify to put its candidates on the ballot. As such, it represents a clear effort to suppress competition in Arkansas's political process. Moreover, it appears to be targeted directly against the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party is the only party to have successfully qualified for ballot access by petition since 2014. Indeed, this is in itself evidence that the existing petition requirement is not set too low. There are organized political parties in Arkansas, but none other than the Green Party has ever managed to marshal the resources to get on the ballot, and the Greens have not done it for the last 2 election cycles. As far as we know, the Libertarian Party, they write, is the only party in Arkansas that is poised to embark on a petition campaign for ballot access in the 2020 elections. The fact that SB 163 includes an emergency clause so it would take effect immediately makes it all the more evident that this bill is intended to stifle potential competition, specifically libertarians, in the 2020 election. That's the emergency? We are gratified to see the editorial page of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette recognize the true intent of SB 163 and to take a position against it. In its editorial, Ain't Broke, Don't Fix It, the Demgaz noted that the bill's sponsors were trying to make things harder for libertarians to make the ballot. The editorial went on to point out the nature of the stakes. The more choices on the ballot, the healthier our democracy. Voters deserve to have more than Democrats and Republicans to choose from. The notion that the ballot is overcrowded, that there isn't enough space for serious candidates, is absurd. Over half of the seats up for election in the Arkansas General Assembly in 2018 were unopposed. There would have been more had it not been for the participation of libertarian candidates in otherwise uncontested races. Nominees of the major political parties, often selected by nothing more than having paid the required fee to an established political party, coasted into office without their names ever being listed on a ballot. Arkansas voters are not suffering from too many choices, quite the opposite. A measure designed to further limit competition is unwarranted, unnecessary, and destructive to healthy democracy in Arkansas. The Libertarian Party goes on. Another important consideration about SB 163 is it is blatantly unconstitutional. It violates the clear edict of a 2006 federal court decision, Green Party of Arkansas versus Daniels. In that case, the court held that the 3% requirement to certify a new political party violates plaintiffs' associated rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution. This ruling was, in fact, the impetus for the legislature to adopt the 10,000 signature rule in the first place. The SB 163 proposes a return to precisely the same scheme that was overturned by the courts over a decade ago. In a statement before the Arkansas Senate State Agencies and Governmental Affairs Committee, the chair of the Libertarian Party pointed out the anti-democratic nature of SB 163 and brought the constitutional issue before the committee. Although his statement was too late to prevent the bill from being passed out of committee, the point was clearly communicated before it went to a vote in the full Senate. Nevertheless, it passed without any discussion of constitutional issues at all. Now it is before the House of Representatives. Goes on. The constitutional questions about SB 163 are important for the citizens of Arkansas. Given the clear precedent in this case, the law is unlikely to pass judicial scrutiny, but the taxpayers will be on the hook for mounting a legal defense. Meanwhile, in the process, the time and energy of a third-party plaintiffs will be drained, leaving fewer available resources to launch effective campaigns in the election and depriving Arkansas voters of libertarian options. The Libertarian Party of Arkansas will be weakened at the expense of both taxpayers and voters who seek an alternative choice on their ballots. Goes on. The requirements of SB 163 represent more than simply a 270% increase in the cost of attaining ballot access. While raising the signature threshold, it leaves intact a limited 90-day petitioning period. To collect 27,000 signatures in 90 days requires 300 valid signatures per day, 7 days a week for 3 months. SB 163 also leaves intact the limitation that there is no recourse to amend petitions to make up for any shortage of signatures. The original submission must suffice. That means a prospective new political party must realistically collect at least 400 signatures per day to make sure that enough valid signatures are submitted. Such an endeavor would require a huge team of out-of-state professional canvassers, and the cost might very well rise to 6 figures. If the members of the Arkansas General Assembly see fit to amend our state's election laws, we suggest that reform should be targeted to open the political process, not lock it down. The Libertarian Party of Arkansas has recently proposed one such reform, the Political Party Inclusion Act, recognizing that a political party is more than just one name at the top of a ticket. The Political Party Inclusion Act would broaden the definition of a party to allow new parties to gain a foothold. When the public dialogue includes more voices and the voters have more choices, the people of Arkansas benefit, even if it makes life a little bit more difficult for incumbents and their entrenched political parties. SB 163, they conclude, represents a blatant intent to suppress competition in the political process, specifically from the Libertarian Party. It also suffers from evident legal flaws. We ask all Arkansas voters who agree that more choices on the ballot means a healthier democracy to contact their representatives in the Arkansas House and urge them to vote no on SB 163. Something tells me this one's going to pass, though. I'm going to be honest. I know one thing. Stuff like this, people kind of tend to stick to their party. That doesn't make it right on principle. The idea of more choices being better, I think, is a no-brainer, but not if we are afraid. Now, let me be clear here. Let's just be clear. If you think this is a good idea, it's because you're afraid of libertarians. If you think this is a good idea, it's because you're afraid of competition. The party of free markets, not supposed to be afraid of competition, not supposed to be afraid of ideas, debating them. Just a thought. Just a thought. Okay, moving on from this, I would like to tell you briefly about a potential tax increase that's coming down the pike. So, one second, I got to take a drink. So the Association of Counties, the Arkansas Association of Counties, they've been having this issue for a while. It's a 911 issue. They've been telling people about it for a while. And they are now out lobbying for a tax increase. They want to add and they want to raise the fee on your cell phone bill. Did you know this right now that Arkansas has one of the highest cell phone taxes on your bill in the country? Got one of the highest ones. And wouldn't you know it, like many things, the money that you spend, the money that you're taxed on your cell phone bill, doesn't actually go to pay for 911. Very little of it does. I think it's like 30 cents on the dollar, or maybe even less than that. But we have the Association of Counties, and they are coming out. Matter of fact, they're passing out flyers saying that they have to ensure the safety of all Arkansans, and they want to raise $30 million from you by increasing the tax on or the fee is what they'll say, on your cell phone bill by like $2.50 is what they're wanting to do. Matter of fact, let's see. Let me pull this thing up. I want to read for you what they're saying here, because we definitely need to get the facts out here. So the Association for Cities and Counties, so they say 911 reform to ensure the safety of all Arkansans, amount by which counties and cities currently supplement 911, $25 million, they say. 911 service suffers from lack of funds. 911 services operating with outdated equipment, technology. 911 service is inefficiently organized. Emergency response times vary throughout the state, they say. Rural areas lack broadband, and first responders cannot communicate with one another easily. The solution is what they say, the Arkansas Public Safety Act is the solution to this problem. And they are taking the easiest route. Anytime you have a problem, the easiest thing to do is to ask for a tax increase, and that's what this bill does. Well, I actually haven't even seen the bill. I'm not even sure if it's been filed yet, but it's certainly in the wings here. So, new technology and infrastructure to meet the needs of the 21st century, reorganize the emergency telephone services, let's see, reduce the number of PSAPs in the state. Let's see, let's get to the money here. Repeal 3, so they say that they're going to repeal 3 fees. Okay. Tariffs, Arkansas Universal Service Charge, and Emergency Telephone Service Charge. Establish 1 transparent fee, the Public Safety Connectivity Charge of $2.25 to be uniform on all landlines and cell phone bills. These reforms will help generate an additional $18 million for 911, $12 million for Arkansas Wireless Information Network, and $8 million for broadband. So they're claiming this would be an average decrease of 32 cents on landline phone bills and an average increase of 47 cents on phone bills. Expand broadband to rural areas. I wonder how to get those numbers. Anyway, this is something that's coming down the pike, and they say it right there. They're trying to get $20 million more from the taxpayers. Is what it seems like to me. Now, what I would suggest happen, you get a lot of pushback, but the harder thing to do here, and listen, I know the counties have this 911 issue. You know what they also have an issue with? The fact that they kind of have an unfunded mandate from the state when it comes to, housing prisoners and that sort of thing. That's a whole other issue. Listen, I get it. But you know what the easier thing or the harder thing to do would be to reallocate some funds that already are coming in. Now, I don't know if there's the will to do that by some. But if you look right now, if you go to the Tax Foundation's website and you look up, cell phone tax or, what the tax that's already under bill, Arkansas, I think, is already number 8 in the country on this. And if that's the case, why would we want to add even more money? An additional $2.50? That doesn't make any sense to me. We're going to take a break, going to reset here. We'll be back, though, in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
And humanity that are also prospering and thriving. And I see that it's due to climate change. Climate change is having an overwhelmingly beneficial result on humanity and the earth.
Well, so, when you talk about that, I've always, thought about the fact that, of course, climate changes. Sometimes there's a place that'll get colder, and then there's another place on the earth that'll get warmer, and, there's kind of a give and take there. But the whole question is, like you were just saying, this idea of man-made climate change, meaning the answer is, and this is just my interpretation, the answer is always socialism. That's always the answer to try to fix climate change.
Oh, it is. Yeah, what they need to do, they want things like the Paris Climate Accords. They want things like a carbon tax. This is a huge new revenue source for governments. And
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, seriously, we're talking about a potential increase in the cell phone tax. Right now, a lot of people don't know, on your bill, you're taxed in Arkansas. A cell phone tax, and the Association of Counties to fund 911, they want more money. They want $2.50 more a month from you. But you've got to understand something. Look at the tax foundation. How high are your cell phone taxes in your state? State and local taxes and fees on wireless service. Back in 2016, they did a study on this. Arkansas is already number 8 in the nation in cell phone taxes. Meaning on your cell phone bill, they tax you at 14.67% already before this potential idea is even talked about. We're already taxed at 14.67%. Louisiana taxes their cell phones at 8.79%. Mississippi 9.24%. Oklahoma 10.92%. Texas 11.58%. And we're basically at 15%. Tennessee 12.1%. Missouri is higher than us at 14.79%. But if you see how dark Arkansas is on this map, the darker you are, the higher you tax your people. I don't know. That's wild to me. How many of you knew that right now the state of Arkansas taxes you at 14.67% on your cell phone bill? How many of you knew that? That is pretty wild stuff. And if you're just joining us, what we're talking about is a problem that the counties have. They say that, their infrastructure for 911, they say that they've got a problem with people who, in some cases, I think they've even got audio of recorded of people calling with an emergency, and there was some failures and they couldn't get through. And, they're saying now if we have more money, that won't happen. That's what they're promising, essentially. If you give us more money, this won't happen again, is what they're saying. So it's not to say that it's not a problem that needs addressing, but what I'm saying is, why is the solution always a tax increase or a fee increase? And, folks, when you realize that right now we're already taxed at 14.67%, how much of that actually goes to help 911? Very, very little. So you could allocate some of that 14.67% to the state taxes every single month on your cell phone bill and say, how much do we need to try to fix and help these counties' 911 systems out? That is what should at least be being discussed and debated. There's 135 legislators at the Marble Palace, and you guys have constitutional power right now. This is the time to debate this stuff. This is the time to look into it. This is the time to ask DFNA, okay, well, can we take a little money from this and directly allocate it to help our counties in 911 if that's what they really need, if that's what we really want to do? The easiest thing to do if you don't want to govern is just go back to the people and ask for more money. But we are an overtaxed state as it is, so please get creative in ways to save money instead of getting creative in ways on how to take more of it from us.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Paris Climate Accord just enables global governance of individual countries. What we see here is that the new Green New Deal that was just proposed by an alarming number of Democrats and even more alarming by some Republicans. I'm not exaggerating when I say that is a socialist manifesto masquerading as environmental policy. It just is. Just the litany of nearly every socialist proposal over the last 30 years is included and thrown into this thing, from guaranteed jobs for all at a living wage to cutting military spending by 50% and closing bases all over the world. It's a crazy hodgepodge. And in fact, you and your listeners may not be aware, but within that Green New Deal, they're going to discourage or forbid non-essential private transportation. In other words, you can't get in your car and drive out to Home Depot anymore. You'll have to take the bus, and it'll be through a new federal mass transit system, so everybody can get around without driving there. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is
crazy. And that's the tip of the iceberg. What's in this Green New Deal? Be afraid.
Yeah, and that certainly is their dream. We're talking with Gregory Wrightstone. He's the author of Inconvenient Facts: The Science That Al Gore Doesn't Want You to Know. He is a geologist. He's been doing this for 35 years. So when it comes to man-made climate change, let's say that they're right and that we're having this massive, we've got to alter our behavior in a way. To me, it's just preposterous that we would know even how to alter our behavior and that we could affect the weather. I mean, and I say the weather because that's really, to me, what they're doing. I mean, I say this, I've said this a lot of times. Anytime I have somebody who is an authority like yourself on, here in Arkansas several years ago, we had some tornadoes came through, and they were just devastating to some local communities here. And about that time, under the Obama administration, they released a report saying that we have to do something about climate change, and if we do, we won't see these weather events like tornadoes that, we live in Tornado Alley. We've always seen tornadoes. And I just thought how offensive that is. Like, if you drive less, or if you get an electric car or some hybrid car, maybe your house would have still been there. And the tornado, it's insane. It's like doing a rain dance. I think you'd have better luck controlling the weather doing a rain dance. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's get back to this about whether or not man's controlling. There are a couple of scientists that I respect that do believe that the increase in CO2 may be affecting up to 50% of the temperature rise we've seen over the last 150 or so years. I'll disagree with them. The majority of skeptics don't believe that. But even so, if you look at the climate models that are used, they overpredict the warming that we will see by 2.5 to 3 times too much. And if we look in the rearview mirror, let's just have your listeners put on their thinking caps. Look in the rearview mirror. What have we seen for the last 100 or 150 years? We've seen the greatest advances in technology, agriculture, humanity, life-saving medicines, decreases in worldwide poverty, advances in energy. We see nothing but we've had in the last 100, 150 years, 5,000 years of advances squeezed into the last 100 or so years. Just complete wonderful things happening. These guys look forward, and they see nothing but doom and despair, calamity, death, apocalypse. Well, if we look through the vast the last, say, 4,500 years of human history, we see that there were other warming periods very similar to what we're in right now, and each one of those ended up a lot warmer than we are right now. And each one of those warming periods was associated with a great rise in civilization and prosperity for humanity. There's a tremendous, the one thing, if your listeners take nothing else away, there's a strong correlation between the rise and fall of temperatures and the rise and fall of civilizations. That during warm periods, the food is bountiful, crops are bountiful, you can feed the population. And if during the cold periods is when really the crap hit the fan. We would see crop failure, pestilence, and mass depopulation every time. Rise and fall of civilizations correlates to the rise and fall of temperatures, and they're telling us just the opposite. Each one of these warming periods were very, very, very beneficial. In fact, I've got a YouTube channel. If you look at Inconvenient Facts YouTube,
I think it's
I've got a
time we
great
ask
video
ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were
on there
intended
on
for
the
us by the founding
relationship.
fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hour number 2. Good morning to you. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. I am going to be at the Capitol, the Marble Palace, later today, and really, really glad that you guys are with us. We're in the middle of our continuing coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. We got a great hour for you. We're going to talk scorecard, and then we're going to talk to State Representative John Eubanks. He'll be on the program coming up at the bottom of this hour to talk about his bill to expand the scope of practice for optometrists in the state. Let's get to it. This is week number 3, and we have the scorecard of bills we're watching from week number 3. Welcome back to the program. We have Mr. Josh Waters with us. Josh, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well, Paul. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Let's get right into it, shall we? What can you tell us about the first bill that is a support bill on the scorecard, SB 170 by Senator Bart Hester, Republican from Cave Springs?
Yeah, so this bill is pretty straightforward. It would tell cities and counties, hey, you can't tell private property owners how they want to design their houses. You can't tell them what the exterior has to look like or be built with. You can't say how many rooms and what types of rooms, the square footage of a house, what the layout looks like. So really protects the freedom that private property owners in designing and building their houses.
Wow, and that does sound so I think a lot of people might be kind of shocked to know that that's something that the government is regulating right now.
Yeah, it's, unfortunately an increasing number of cities and counties are looking at this. Some I know have looked at, the International Property Code. And it's usually always done in a way they want to, clean up and remove blight. That's kind of how it's sold as. But at the end of the day, if someone has private property, and especially for, let's say a home builder, they decided they've bought up a plot of land, they're going to put in a subdivision, they've planned it all out, and then a government comes in and says, no, we want your subdivision to look like this. That's not freedom. And so this bill would say, hey, cities and counties can't do this type of thing.
Yeah, let's think about this for a second. The more cities and counties that attempt to pass these types of ordinances, not only does that restrict a person's choices, but it's also going to increase the cost for home builders. I mean, at least that's the way I would imagine that's what it would do.
Yeah, I mean, good, and that's an argument, that I think actually Senator Flowers, a Democrat, was like, hey, this could decrease the ability for affordable housing, especially in lower income areas, drive up the prices and drive people out of the market, maybe.
So you say this had bipartisan support then?
Yeah, it's gone through the Senate side, and it had bipartisan support, and so I think it's probably on its way. I did read, there's going to be maybe some amendments to it, so we'll keep track of those. But based on what's out there right now in the legislation, it's a bill that would increase economic freedom for people and home builders. So this is a good bill, I think.
Housing Design Freedom. It's by Senator Bart Hester. It's SB 170, so feel free to call your legislator folks and tell them to support SB 170, because it seems like it's less government, not more, and that's certainly something that the citizens would benefit from. All right, let's move on now. Another bill of support. This is another good one, surprising but good. SB 211. It is the income tax bill by Senator Jonathan Dismang, a Republican from Beebe. Tell us about SB 211, Josh.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, Paul, and it's a straight income tax bill. There is a draft bill of the governor's tax plan that came out after the tax task force, and that included some conformity legislation that would increase taxes, include the internet sales tax. That has been dropped. This is a standalone bill that, when fully implemented, would save taxpayers $97 million per year. It would drop the top rate here in Arkansas from 6.9%, which is by far the highest in the region, down to 5.9%. Over or through fiscal year 2022.
I saw some liberal groups out there claiming, being like, it'll cost more than $97 million. And what do you say to that, Josh?
Yeah, well, great. That means that means job creators and hardworking families will get to keep even more of their money.
Yeah.
That estimate's out there. That I think it's 157 million is what I saw. A competing group or whatever say, and the reason I say that is because they're looking at the growth of the people who are going to be seeing this tax cut. They would anticipate growth from year 2016 numbers, which is what DFNA was looking at. So
yeah.
So we'll see. What the number ultimately is. But what we know, Paul, is that standalone bill is a tax cut. It would reduce revenue going to government and allow job creators and hardworking Arkansans to keep more of their money.
Yeah. Well, and we talk about the terminology. Liberal groups are talking about it'll cost the state. It'll cost the state. It'll save taxpayers. I mean, that's what we're talking about. $97 million tax cut means $97 million back into the pockets of Arkansans. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if we want more economic freedom, we want these job creators to reinvest their money or spend it to grow the economy even more. They have to have it. And so this is a long overdue plan. It's been talked about a lot, how we had to be more competitive. Paul, we talked about before, unfortunately, Arkansas, 46 out of 50 when it comes to business tax climate. Hopefully this number is going to help that a little bit, and it's one step in the right direction.
All right, next up, a bill that is supported, according to this Conduit scorecard, HB 1342, a sales tax cut on used vehicles by State Representative John Payton, a Republican from Wilburn. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so a lot of people may not know that there's actually a form of double taxation right now on the purchase of any used vehicle that costs more than $4,000. Right now, there's an exemption. If it's less than $4,000, there's no sales tax applied. And this would just increase that to anything below $7,500. Any used car sold for below $7,500 wouldn't have sales tax applied. When we think about it, Paul, these same cars that are being resold, when they were first sold new, they had sales tax paid on them. So any savings, it's going to be savings from double taxation. There's also going to be savings for the people of Arkansas who might be looking for a used vehicle, and you can get a pretty good used vehicle for $7,500.
Yeah. Wow, that would be fantastic. I mean, that would be a huge burden off of the people who are in that used car market. There's a lot of people that don't even understand why. I'm one of them. Why there's even sales tax applied to used vehicles, because the sales tax has already been paid when they were bought brand new.
Yeah, it's kind of that theme of they'll keep taxing it at every level if they can.
Well,
it's
what is it? If it moves, tax it, and cars move. So we're gonna.
Yeah.
I guess we're gonna tax it. Well, that sounds like a win right there. And where is that in the process? Do we know yet? Has it been heard in any committees yet?
It has not. It was just filed the end of last week.
Okay.
So it'll be added to the agenda. It's already been added to the agenda for Revenue and Tax Committee, but hasn't been heard yet.
Okay. All right. Moving on, another bill that's a good one, HB 1343, the Transparency in County Government Spending by State Representative Spencer Hawks, a Republican from Conway. What can you tell us about HB 1343, Josh?
Pretty straightforward bill. It would say county clerks have to publish online on a website the annual financial report for the county. And so there's some research done actually by the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, ACRE, and they looked at how counties stacked up in this transparency index. And unfortunately, Arkansas overall was pretty poor on this report. There are some counties that were very transparent, posting information on what the county government's doing. So this bill would just say, hey, county governments, you have to at least publish the annual financial report. And this is an increase in transparency and allows people to know what their county government is doing with their money in a more accessible way than just a newspaper that's published in the county. That's the current standard.
Wow. Yeah, so, bills, folks, a lot of this is, anytime we're looking at more transparency and able to, hold the government accountable for how, they spend our money, we need to have that window of transparency in all levels of government, and that's why this is such a good bill. In order to keep, if it grows government, increases dependency on government, spends money we don't have, that's a bad thing. Well, in order to keep the government oftentimes from doing those things, from growing, you have to be able to know as an average citizen what it is they're doing, or it will tend to just spiral out of control. All right, Josh, let's get to the last bill on the scorecard for week number 3. It is SB 192 by Republican Senator Missy Irvin from Mountain View, and this is not a bill that we're supporting. This is a bill that we're opposed to. It would be a new health care council to lobby legislators, I read here over at conduitnews.com. What can you tell us about SB 192?
Yeah, Paul, you mentioned it last week on the show. Unfortunately, this bill is eerily similar to a parody you put out. And what it does, it sets up a new healthcare council to where they're going to be in a very organized position amongst all 23 members in the healthcare community, people on licensing boards, to basically say, hey, we think this should or should not be done when it comes to a license or scope of practice. And so at the end of the day, I think, unfortunately, what would happen with this type of council, it would be another way for any occupational licensing reform, expanding scope of practice, to be able to see the light of day. It's already so hard to get bills like that through. There's rules that limit when those bills have to be filed by. There's rules about whether an interim study proposal has to be submitted months in advance. And so this is just, reading through it another way that would potentially harm, just leave the system in place. There's plenty of opportunities for the healthcare industry to come in the table, get involved in the process to stop bills. And I'm just worried this would be a very unified and organized way with the stamp of approval from this fancy-sounding council to legislators on what they think would be best.
I mean, the healthcare industry in this state is already so powerful and that goes with the licensing of healthcare professionals. And you're telling me, you mentioned, a parody that we've done here, and it was, several years old at this point, the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards, and it was meant as satire to say, and that, these licensing boards are really oftentimes not about public safety. It's about protecting your industry. It's about kind of a shakedown, if you will. And that seems to be what's kind of, maybe not necessarily shakedown, but certainly protecting the industry from reforms, because here's what they're noticing. These attempts at reform are not going away, because you do have a lot more Republicans down there who believe that licenses, the fact that we have more licensing boards in the state of New York, are barriers to starting a business, therefore barriers to economic growth. And that's really what we're talking about here. And when you have a healthcare community that has more stringent licensing requirements oftentimes than our surrounding states, it means that healthcare professionals aren't going to move here. And it also means higher prices for your consumer because, there's less competition. So, to me, this is a direct response at scope of practice bills and everything else continuing to be written and be debated. And I think they're wanting to really have one more firewall. They're creating a new firewall so that they can stop reforms in our healthcare system.
Yeah, I think the argument will be, any way we can improve public safety, let's do that. I think they're, currently printing safeguards for the public safety with everything that's already set up. And I just don't think, this is a necessary move that's needed. And I think you're right, Paul. I think it's a direct response to this idea, but because Arkansas has, in the last 2 years, the reports I've seen, is continually top 5, top 10 worst in the country when it comes to occupational licensing burdens. And there's been efforts underway now for a couple of years to try to address that and to try to make Arkansas less burdensome. I think there's plenty of safeguards already set up to address public safety. And this is just an unneeded new council that's going to have a lot of lobbying power, in my opinion. And the bill specifically says that it's to evaluate and provide recommendations to the General Assembly. It's going to be a fancy endorsement or not endorsement from this council if it's set up on these bills.
Yeah, I'm reading here from ConduitNews.com. It's already nearly impossible to expand the scope of practice or reduce licensing burdens here in Arkansas. Setting up a new council to better organize and speak on behalf of the industry would be unnecessary. Instead of creating this new council, the General Assembly should allow the current legislative process to proceed. There are already enough safeguards for public safety. Setting up this council could lead to more regulation and less scope of practice expansion for healthcare professionals. This would decrease competition, raise prices, and reduce economic freedom for Arkansans. Again, the bill number is by Republican Senator Missy Irvin. It's SB 192, would set up a new healthcare council to lobby legislators. So you should call your legislator, folks, and ask them to oppose this. Again, SB 192. Now, this was filed last week, right, Josh? I don't think that this has been heard in any committee yet.
Right, that's right.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right, so that's the Week 3 scorecard. And Josh Waters, we always appreciate you having you on, and we'll look forward to Week 4 next week.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Have a good one.
All righty. Folks, this video is going to be made a separate YouTube video up at Conduit News, so you can share with your friends this week about what we're looking out for, as well as you don't forget to sign up, as always, for the I don't have the number in front of me right now, but like yesterday I got a text message from the Conduit communication line, when the Week 3 scorecard came out, and it was really good. I'll have that number for you if you want to text join to that number when we come back. But I've gone over. I'll be back in just a moment.
Between the witch hunts of Europe in the late Middle Ages and the rise and fall of temperatures. It's really cool.
Wow.
A real strong relationship. There might have been 20 or 30,000 supposed witches killed, burned at the stake, or drowned during that time frame. And it was all because of, as we went into the devastating cold temperatures of the Little Ice Age, crops failed, and half the population of Iceland perished. It's thought a third of the population of the entire Earth perished during that time, and it's related to cold. It's not. It's the warm periods that are really, really good historically, and they're telling us just the opposite. And can I jump? You had also mentioned about tornadoes. 26 tornadoes have definitely been a long-term decline. 2016 had the second fewest tornadoes, F3 or greater, in the history of NOAA, and that goes back to 1850. 2013 had the lowest.
Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Randy on Facebook writing, the only thing left to license is a license to die. Sounds like the title of a James Bond movie, Randy. I like it. Appreciate you guys participating on the Facebook comments section. We really do. Coming up, we're going to be talking with State Representative John Eubanks about this deregulation of optometrists, allowing them to practice to their full scope of practice, but right now that's limited in Arkansas. We'll talk to him about, why he thought this was necessary, this bill. I'll give you the bill number on that, by the way, before we get there. HB 1251 by State Representative Eubanks. We'll be talking to him again here in just a moment. Coming up also before the show's over, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin penning an amazing, I'm calling it an amazing op-ed, Give Families Freedom to Choose. It's on school choice, and it is really, really good. We'll go over that as well coming up in a little bit. Also, want to remind you guys, we'll be talking with an authority here in the state of Arkansas, an authority nationally on school choice. Dr. Patrick Wolf will be with us coming up on Wednesday, coming up tomorrow on the program. I was anticipating Aaron Pilkington's Stand Your Ground bill to run today, but I'm told that that's been postponed right now. And we'll see why. I'm gonna try to find out why. But I do know that last week there was law enforcement agencies that were opposing this. They couldn't really give a good reason, in my opinion. But some law enforcement agencies are afraid of people defending themselves. I don't know why, but from what I can tell, there are some law enforcement officials that are they get weary when they think about the idea of somebody defending themselves, using deadly force to save their own life. That's something that they don't like very much. Talk Business and Politics with a article 2 days ago. Roby Brock, will tort reform return? It's an interesting question to ask. Will they try to do something on tort reform in light of the news that we had with David Norsworthy and Jeff Wardlaw, their secret business relationship that's now exposed, the $80,000 wire transfer that went to Jake Files right after a similar bill was filed, the idea that now Gilbert Baker's been indicted. Will tort reform come back up when it's clear that the nursing home industry has been involved to the level that's raising suspicions and investigations? I don't know, but it is a good question. I mean, I would definitely not put it past them. Back in just a moment.
So here in the last few years, we've had the first and second lowest number of tornadoes in history in the United States. Again, completely opposite of what we're being told.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about what we are being told. More importantly, who is doing the telling. So where does the media come in here, and what responsibility do they have? I mean, they're the ones that have got an entire generation of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thinking that we've only got 12 years left on the planet.
Yeah, I can kind of. She's not the brightest bulb in our arsenal, obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean,
so,
I was saying the other day. I mean, blondes everywhere are thanking her. I mean, she's putting an end to dumb blonde jokes.
Can I borrow that?
You can. It was a meme.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with that one either.
Okay. All right. Well, you're getting some good ones there, but you're right. I don't really so much blame her because she's a product of what we're being told, and we're being told that supposedly by 97% of the scientists, which is, I do put a whole chapter in my book. And your listeners can learn more by going to inconvenientfacts.xyz, and which you can do there. And where was I going with that? Oh yes, with the Green New Deal. If I open the book up, why are they doing it? I think is the question. And I open the book up with a quote from H.L. Mencken, and he talks about how governments and institutions need to impose what he calls imaginary hobgoblins of alarm. And they use these hobgoblins of alarm to frighten the population. And the population needs to be scared to death in order to accept otherwise onerous and punishing regulations like the Paris Climate Accord or carbon tax. I mean, well, let me ask, why in the world would we, Paul, impose economically crippling sanctions on the United States? Why would we do it? We wouldn't. The only reason to do it is if we're standing on the edge of this climate apocalypse precipice, and that by decreasing our carbon dioxide output, we could forestall that looming apocalypse. So they need a frightened population. We see no better evidence of that than in this last national climate assessment released back in December at a great fanfare. I mean, that thing was like a walk through the book of Revelation. They predicted everything but flaming toads falling out of the sky. Their main thing they pointed at was forest fires, which I use when I talk to people all over the country, and if there's a group down in your neck of the woods that want me to come speak, we can talk about it. It will be entertaining and enlightening and scientific. But I use forest fires as a great example because this last National Climate Assessment
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program this morning. Kind of in the home stretch here. Thanks for starting the beginning of your day, though, with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. I want to welcome to the program with State Representative John Eubanks is on the line. Mr. State Representative, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing good. Now, you're the state representative from District 74, so why don't you tell our audience the geographic boundaries of District 74?
Well, it's in west central Arkansas. It is all of Logan County, one precinct in Franklin County, southern Sebastian County, and northern Scott County. So it's a fairly good size geographically.
Yeah, that is. Well, hey, I wanted to have you on because of this bill that I've been following of yours, HB 1251. And what can you tell us about this? It has to do with the expanding scope of practice for the profession of optometry.
That is correct, and it's apparently getting a lot of attention and is creating a little controversy. The bill is actually pretty simple. It's going to allow optometrists to, on a very limited basis, expand their scope of practice into areas that they are currently being trained to do at their College of Optometry. They practice on patients. They are able to practice these procedures in 3 states that are surrounding Arkansas: Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Kentucky currently. Alaska is currently writing they passed the legislation also and are currently writing their rules and regs.
So this is, you say it's generating some controversy. From who?
Well, the ophthalmologists and the medical society appear to object. They think it's an encroachment into their field. They're contending that the optometrists are not adequately trained to do that, and I think from the history of what has been taking place, that is not true. Oklahoma has been allowing optometrists to perform these minor, non-invasive procedures for over 20 years. Kentucky has been allowing that to take place for approximately 8. Louisiana, I think approximately 4 years now. There are other states that are going to be having legislation filed this year as well. So, like I said, I think these are minor, non-invasive procedures, and I'm a little disappointed that the ophthalmologists and the medical society are putting up such a fight to prevent this.
Well, yeah, from my understanding, ophthalmologists, they think they kind of have the market cornered anytime you use the word surgery around the eye. But this is not the type, like you were saying, these are not the type of procedures that are, very invasive. These are non-invasive, procedures that optometrists are already, here's the thing, they're already trained to do. And so what this comes down to me, State Representative Eubanks, is about giving the public a choice, giving the public more choices, more options. Yeah, sure, an ophthalmologist can do this, but so can an optometrist. So I don't see what the big deal is. What are they afraid of?
I really don't know. The first person that a person goes to see when they are seeking eye care is your optometrist. Optometrists currently have full-time offices in 80% of the counties. Ophthalmologists only have full-time offices in about 30% of the counties. So this is an access issue for a state that is very rural. We have a lot of elderly people. Ophthalmologists contend, well, they can be, everybody is within 60 minutes of an ophthalmologist. Well, that may be true, but that can be a hardship for a lot of our people in this state.
Well, so can you tell me what kind of minimal procedures are we talking about here? Can you just give me an example?
You bet. And these procedures all take place in the office. They don't require any general anesthesia. There's actually 5 procedures. 2 of them, well, let me start with. 1 has to do with what they call the removal of benign lesions. A lot of people like to say lumps and bumps that surround the eye. The other one deals with injections. And then there's 3 minor laser procedures, 2 that deal with the treatment of glaucoma, and 1 has to do with a procedure that takes place, if needed, after cataract surgery. And the cataract surgery, of course, is something that ophthalmologists would perform.
Okay, so, we're not talking, because I see a part in the bill that it still says, listen, a licensed optometrist shall not perform the following types of ophthalmic surgery. like retinal laser procedures, things like that. Like they're still in this bill saying, hey, look, this is stuff that ophthalmologists do. This is just minor stuff that can be done, like you said, in the offices of an optometrist. And again, they're already being trained to do it, and other states already allow them to do it. And so I think what we're seeing here, John, is anytime, a lot of times with these professions, anytime there's a potential for a competitor to come in and offer the same service, people start to think that they might lose money. I mean, is that maybe what some of their fear is? Are they afraid that there might be some ophthalmologists that lose money because the optometrists are able to provide the service now?
I don't know that I want to speculate necessarily on what their reasons are, but it would certainly make you think that the bottom line is part of the driving reason for their objection to this.
Yeah.
Like I said, Oklahoma's been doing this for 20 years, and without any incidents there, or in Kentucky. So they're putting out horror stories about people going to go blind, and that they're going to not be able to provide the care that our citizens need and require. So like I said, I'm a little disappointed that the opposition on this is saying and doing what they are right now.
Where is this bill right now in the process?
Well, right now, this bill cannot be run in committee until Scope Week, which is the chairman announced was going to be the 18th of February. So that Tuesday the 19th will be the first day. Now, rules require that this bill was filed by the deadline, which it was, and also the rules require that you cannot amend it for 15 days. So right now it's just sitting there allowing people to study it and examine it, and if they have any questions. Now, if I suspect that if something was to come up before the bill runs, that where it could be amended, it would have to take place at a future date right now.
Right. Well, yeah, it's also plenty of time for the other side to get their talking points together and come up with these horror stories as you described them, State Representative Eubanks. And, hey, full disclosure, I want everybody out there to know that my father is, in fact, an optometrist. So, just take that for a grain of, take that for what it is. I wanted to make sure I be transparent with you all. But
I too want to be transparent, and I am not an optometrist. I have no financial interest in any business of a medical nature, and I have no direct or indirect relations in the state that are connected, that would benefit from this legislation.
Well, hey, and I appreciate you saying that, State Representative Eubanks. In today's climate, that certainly is refreshing. But, hey, this bill is just about allowing optometrists to do what they are already doing in other states, what they're trained to do. And I appreciate you bringing this bill, you being the lead sponsor on it, being willing to take the heat, because what this is about is more choices and giving people more freedom to choose. And I really appreciate you coming on the program and talking about it with us this morning.
And Paul, I'd like to just make one other point. This is an attempt to keep Arkansas competitive. Recently, we had 15 graduates and from the state of Arkansas, and 20% of those have decided to practice in Oklahoma because they can practice everything that they've been trained to do. Wow. So I'd like those people to be coming back to the state of Arkansas and practicing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, of course, that's what we need, like you were saying, in the rural districts and everything else. We have underserved populations. State Representative John Eubanks, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.
All righty, folks. The bill number, again, that's HB 1251. Your sponsors there in the House, again, obviously State Representative Eubanks there, but then you have Representatives Miller, Brown, Christensen, Dan Douglas, Representative Evans, Holcomb, Jett, Lynch, Petty, Brandt Smith, S. Smith, Vaught, Watson. On the Senate side, Senators Dave Wallace, Bart Hester, Senator Ricky Hill, and Senator Jason Rapert. So, it's got some broad support in both of those chambers there. Now it's, like he said, it's got to sit until what they call scope week. We were just talking about how the scope, it's really hard to get anything. That's what you're seeing. We were just talking about Senator Missy Irvin's bill to set up like another firewall, a health care council to try to make it harder. They're not going to say that on its face, but the idea is to try to make it harder to get scope of practice bills passed, to kind of undo this monopoly. The status quo is not always necessarily a good thing. In terms of licensing, it's not always about public safety. It's about protecting your nut. It's about protecting what you've got. Speaking of the status quo, let's talk about school choice, shall we? This was a fantastic op-ed in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. It ran on Sunday. Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin with the headline, "Give Families Freedom to Choose." Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin writing, "Ensuring our children receive a quality education is one of the primary responsibilities of state government. Look at our state's budget. Almost half of all general revenue the state collects funds K through 12 education. Despite this robust investment, our educational outcomes still lag behind most other states. Arkansas typically ranks between 39th and 45th in public education among the 50 states, and only 41% of our 3rd through 10th graders are reading at a grade level. Like most Arkansans, my wife and I attended Arkansas public schools," he writes. "My son is a student in the Little Rock School District, and my oldest daughter spent 7 years in the Little Rock School District. We all have a stake in public education and must drastically improve education in Arkansas. Governor Hutchinson and his administration have made important strides through the computer coding program and the Reading Initiative for Student Excellence Initiative. But expanding school choice is the critical next step we must take in education. By definition, he says, my definition of school choice is simple. Parents, not the government, should choose where and how their children are educated. Whether it's a traditional public school, a charter school, a private school, or a homeschool, parents know best when it comes to their precious and unique children. The status quo doesn't give parents many choices. The system is designed so that students attend the local school district in which they live. Imagine if you could only buy your groceries in the arbitrary district assigned to you. Want to shop at Walmart? Kroger? Too bad. There's not one of those in your district. We would reject this one-size-fits-all model if it were applied to any other area of our lives." He goes on, "When parents have a choice, schools have to earn the business of their customers, parents and children." Let me stop right here. The fact that Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin is saying what is obvious, but what is rejected by government in many cases, that the parents and children are the customers, is a shift in mentality. Most people don't think that. I mean, I think that. I think many of you want that to be the reality. "When FedEx and UPS compete for customers," he writes, "the result is innovation, efficiency, and better delivery of services. Choice drives competition. Competition drives innovation, and innovation leads to excellence. The healthy competition lifts the performance of all schools, including traditional public schools. Raising the bar and welcoming excellence, whatever its source, benefits everyone: schools, parents, teachers, and especially students." According to the Arkansas Policy Foundation, nearly 28,000 Arkansas children currently attend charter schools. Another 20,500 attend private schools. Over 15,000 children take advantage of public school choice, and 19,500 children are homeschooled. That means approximately 83,000 Arkansas children are currently exercising a form of school choice. Why are parents seeking choice? Some students are trapped. Let me say that again. Some students are trapped in underperforming schools, and their families can't afford to move their residence. Other families have students with individualized needs, and schools like the Hannah School in Little Rock, which specializes in teaching students with dyslexia, are better equipped to meet them. Some are from military families and don't control where they live. Some face severe bullying or attend schools that are unsafe. Many desire the pedagogy used or values taught at a particular school. Given these and other reasons, it's not surprising that a recent poll found 74% of Arkansans surveyed said they believe children learn best when parents can customize an education to fit their individual needs. A few years ago, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin writes, the legislature passed the Succeed Scholarship Program for children, the state's first opportunity scholarship program tailored to children with disabilities. This program gives children a stipend so they can attend a private school that meets their individualized needs. Although the program is limited in scope, there are already many success stories. Legislators who supported the Succeed Scholarship Program, which passed unanimously in the state Senate and with a 90 out of 100 vote in the state House, should naturally support expanding those scholarships beyond that small group of students to other students, such as the sons and daughters of military personnel, foster children, or any child for that matter. We must do better. We must do a better job of expanding choice to all Arkansans. The wealthy already have a choice. They can afford to live in neighborhoods that have the best school districts or pay to send their kids to private schools. We shouldn't begrudge them those options, but we should work to provide all families with that sort of choice. No child should be forced to attend a school that doesn't meet their needs simply because they were born in the wrong zip code. Other states have been leading on choice for years. Florida began giving parents more choice 20 years ago through programs like the McKay Scholarship for students with disabilities and the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship Program. Today, Education Week ranks Florida's K-12 achievement as the fourth best in the nation, even though its adjusted per-pupil spending ranks 48th out of 50 in this country. We should learn from Florida's experience. Opponents of choice, such as union bosses and some on the far left, oppose anything that upsets the status quo. They believe there is something inherently wrong about taxpayer money funding private schools, even though they don't object to giving taxpayer money to private insurance companies, nonprofits, and private corporations. The foundational problem with all the anti-choice arguments is that they ask parents to set aside the best interests of their children today in hopes that decades down the road, the system will improve for children yet to be born. Improving education through school choice should not be a partisan issue, he writes. We should all be able to agree that every child deserves a quality education. Our kids come first, before politics, before unions, and before party label. We have a limited amount of time to solve this problem. Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin writes, I'm not interested in the 100-year plan. A child in the fourth grade today will only get one chance at the fourth grade, and that's why we must act now. Many of our legislators understand this problem and will be working to address it in the current legislative session. If we succeed, all Arkansans will benefit. Tim Griffin, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Arkansas. Excellent, excellent op-ed. Was published Sunday in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. He's exactly right, and this goes back to what we were just talking about with Representative Eubanks on a different scale. More choice. Letting you have the freedom to choose whether it's what doctor you want to go see or whether it's what school you want your kids to go to. What is wrong with choice? We're going to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Back in a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed roller lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
On the front and back pages had pictures of forests in flame, and they flatly stated that increasing forest fires were due to global warming. But the experts and the data tell us exactly the opposite. Forest and wildfires have been in a long-term decline for more than 100 years, and the experts at the Canadian Fire Service and here in the United States tell it's due to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Even in California, the CAL FIRE data, if you go to my website, I've got a page devoted to it. You can see the data on California. I've got a blog on the California fires. You can see what CAL FIRE says. The CAL FIRE data shows that California, the number of fires, get this, hold on, has been declined by 50% over the last 30 or so years. Who knew? You didn't, did you?
No, not at all.
Everybody, before I got into it and looked at it, I thought forest fires were increasing. Well, why wouldn't you? That's what we're being told. But the data is stark and clear and overwhelming.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. All right, so we're going to be doing the show tomorrow from the Answer Studios, 101.1 The Answer. Many of you are listening to the program right now on that station. We'll be down in Little Rock for the next couple of days, monitoring everything that's going on at the Marble Palace. Let's see here. The last thing I will leave you with, I was monitoring this piece by Roby Braca also, the Talk Business and Politics headline, legislators say governor's tax plan could go further, should be opposed. So they have some people saying, like, obviously everybody would like more tax cuts, but then you got people on the left that's saying, no, we can't believe that you're going to cut our taxes. Anyway, the good news here is the governor's tax plan passed out of the Senate committee, sponsored by Senator Jonathan Dismang. It is a standalone bill, and we talked about it just now with Mr. Josh Waters. It has made the Conduit scorecard. It is something that we support because it's a straight income tax cut from 6.9 to 5.9, but basically called the 5.9 plan. And so that's a really, really good, encouraging thing. And you know what? We'll look to the future to see if there's other things that are coming down the pike. We already talked about the 911 problem, and you have the Association of Counties that are wanting to raise your cell phone tax that's on your bill every month. Arkansas already has the 8th highest cell phone tax in the country at 14%. It's actually above 14%. Let me give you the exact number. I have it right here. 14.67%. That is the cell phone tax in the state of Arkansas. State and local taxes and fees on wireless service. And so if we were to put an additional $2.50 on that, look, there's got to be a way to take what we're already paying for cell phones. And look, their problem is this. A long time ago, you have the tax on landlines, right? And less people are having landlines now, so your tax revenue's gone down. I understand that. But let's use the money that we're already giving government to do the things that we all need, like roads and 911 service. How hard is that? But we're over-leveraged, unfortunately. Anyway, we'll continue to keep an eye out on it. Keep updated over at conduitnews.com. Watch our Facebook page for our digital shorts from the Capitol. All right, Arkansas, we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, have a great day and be safe.